Good evening. Our speaker today grew up in Phoenix, Arizona as an only child. His family owned a salvage yard business where he learned the value of hard work. He received his bachelor's degree in political science from ASU and a master's degree from Rhodes College in New York. He is a certified public manager. He has fulfilled numerous roles. He served 11 years as an assistant to the city administrator for communication and public affairs. He's been worked at PBS as a producer and director for KAET TV, classical music radio broadcaster at KHET FM. He's also been the president of the NAACP, and he's also been a teacher. Currently, he's serving on the Crossroad Mission Advisory Board. He's a writer, a composer, a public speaker. His current project is a tribute manuscript to his late wife, Sharon, who passed away from cancer in November. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my friend, Mike Shelton.
One thing I really want to do is thank that church in El Centro. I love that skit. Wow, Executive Board of the NAACP, organizers of this wonderful MLK celebration, Mayor and City Council, Board of Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are here to honor the accomplishments, the legacy, the life, the purpose of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the greatest civil rights leader in American history, and indeed one of our greatest leaders in history, period. As we do so, we continue to reflect on the Tucson tragedy of January 8th. As we do so, unfortunately, we have to think about that 22-year-old person who engaged in that demon-possessed murder spree. But there was a 20-year-old younger man who was more worth paying attention to because he was placed by God in the right place at the right time. Because he spent time learning first aid, and he had the presence of mind to apply that knowledge to save the life of Congressman Jeffers. It does go to show that neither evil nor goodness is determined by age. We remember that Dr. King was felled by an assassin's bullet. Nonetheless, we have learned from experience that bullets will not kill hope, and that bullets will not and must not kill love. The events of last week reminded me of some lyrics from the musical South Pacific. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you're 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. But we're also taught something else. My peace I leave unto you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. I'm going to share with you a story from the Bible. The Roman governor of Judea was sick of the place. It was dirty, smelly, dusty. He didn't want to be there. Pontius Pilate, though, did not have a choice. Like anyone in his position, he couldn't choose his hot potato. But on this day, standing in the light of the portico, was the rabbi he wished would go away. Jesus of Nazareth stood bloody from his 39 lashes, his scalp bleeding, and the crown of thorns rammed on his head. He stood weak, yet he was strong. This rabbi that wouldn't go away. Pilate asked him several questions, but he wouldn't respond. Exasperated, Pilate yelled in his face, "Who are you? What are you? Don't you realize I have the power to set you free or to crucify you?" Jesus, his battered mouth surely parched from pain and thirst, replied, "You have no power over me that my Father in heaven had already given to you." He would never surrender who he was or what he was. He never lost sight of his mission, neither did Dr. King. The question asked of Jesus is a question each of us must face at some time. Who are you? And what are you? What is your answer? Dr. King wrote of the necessity of going beyond yourself when he referred to the biblical story of the Good Samaritan. He said, the Samaritan possessed the capacity for a dangerous altruism. He risked his life to save a brother. When we ask why the priest and the Levite did not stop to help a wounded man, it raises questions. I imagine the first question, which the priest and Levite asked, was, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to me? The Good Samaritan, though, by the very nature of his concern, reversed that question. If I do not stop to help that man, what will happen to him? The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in times of moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. The true neighbor will risk his position, his prestige, even his life for the welfare of others. In the dangerous valleys and hazardous pathways, he will lift some bruised and beaten brother to a higher and more noble life. During the historic civil rights movement, it was primarily the youth who answered that question. There was Linda Brown, 7-year-old who began walking to school 6 miles one way and 12 miles round trip. That would be like walking from here to Kofa or Sabolo. It's quite a walk. From her home in Topeka, Kansas, she walked down dusty streets and railroad yards. The nearest school was half a mile away. It almost felt like going to Carver Park. But in the era of segregation, the black school was that way. Who was Linda and what was Linda? She was a 7-year-old girl who was taught well enough by her parents that she navigated cars and trucks and dogs and wide railroad tracks without incident. Went to school every day, 5 days a week, walking that 12-mile round trip. And when the 1954 landmark case named after her, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, reached the U.S. Supreme Court, her head wasn't blown like a balloon. She did not let fame go to her head. And 50 years later, she still keeps her feet on the ground. There was the Little Rock Nine. These were 9 teens in Arkansas who would rather have been having fun. But instead they accepted the role of leadership, paving the way to end discrimination in Little Rock Central High School, walking with their heads high. And I love the way the choir sung that because that really fit the dignity with which they walked. They walk through mobs who wish them dead. Do you think of kids now who sometimes are so wondering, well, what are we going to have for lunch to go to school? Are we going to have recess to go to school? They're wondering when we live to come home after going to school. If you ask the Little Rock Nine who they were and what they were, they tell you they were just kids who hung together and helped one another in injustice. But they also needed strong adults in their lives who were up to the task and would not let them down. I believe that all kids should benefit from adults in their life who will take the time to teach them and enjoy them, to show them how to work with their hands, to think with their minds, to feel with their hearts, and to sense with their spirits. If you know the story of Superman, when he was a baby, his father put him in a rocket, or his planet blows up and he flies to planet Earth. Now, if you take that story and you follow what happens in a lot of homes, too many homes, you find the super baby's daddy looking at that rocket, thinking, you know, I will take that rocket. And baby is left with baby's mama, while daddy gets in the rocket and flies away. Well, this is not the way this should be happening here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we need men who will stand by their women and by their children. We need men who will not abandon their families, who show determination and direction, and do anything to save them. I'm going to tell you something personal, and I'm not going to leave out the ladies as I say this. Now, part of my life, I was raised by my single divorced mother, and we lived in Oakland, California. And when we did, she had a friend, a male friend, and his name was Reggie. Now, Reggie was a nice man. It was okay. He took me out to San Francisco Bay, where we went fishing. Enjoyed it. There was one day, one Saturday, we came back to the apartment, and we're going to have lunch, and Reggie pulled out a beer. Reggie popped the top of the beer. And they gave 9-year-old me the beer. And before my mother could do anything, I did take that can, and I did drink it. It was not cream soda. Now, what did my mother say? Did she say, oh, that's cute, have another? No, that is the stuff that tabloids are made of, and unfortunately, there are too many stories of that kind. Did she say, bad, put that down, and then just continue as usual? No.